Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Breton. Okay, last but not least, it's Shara Ali for the Green Party. Yeah, there you
go. Thank you very much for your invitation, Chair. And with apologies, you don't know whether I'm not least, not having heard me yet. But let's hope I can deliver something. In fact, I met two of the panelists on a TV program just about 3 weeks ago now, and I think perhaps we'll all be a bit surprised that although that panel interview was not supposed to be about the expenses debacle, that scandal is still running as we speak. Now, I don't want to dominate my speech with that as well, but I do think it would be worth framing what I'm about to say within the context of that. So what I would want to say is that when we look at the spectacle of politicians from across the parties and the political establishment doing their best to make amends for being found out, and we see, for example, Hazel Blears holding up a £13,000 cheque, what are we supposed to think? See, unfortunately, this undermines our confidence in all politicians and politics generally. The trouble is that politics has become an exercise in media manipulation. And even Hazel Blears at that time, in attempting to make amends, she actually said, I actually care what people think of me. The trouble is, politicians tend to care what people think of you when they've been found out. That isn't actually a good enough reason to do the right thing, that you think you'll be found out. So you actually want politicians, and you would expect everybody to say this, but you need to identify for yourself who are those politicians who believe in what they're saying. So I would put it to you, and you still have to judge with all politicians, including green ones, where they stand, whether you can believe in them, what confidence you have in them. You have to find a way of assessing that. And I would say if there is a sense in which the Green Party differs, it's that we're looking at the long term. We haven't been in politics because we wanted to be popular. For sure, it isn't the first party you'd go into if you want to get elected quickly. We've been talking about things that everybody's known about, scientists have been talking about for decades now, and one of those being the threat of climate change. So you might consider, firstly, that those politicians who have an entitlement to believe are those who have been talking about things for the good of the nation and for the good of other people, even though it hasn't necessarily been that popular. So let me just give three general themes, if I may. First one I've kind of touched on, which is the issue of climate change. Now, the temperature record is going up at an exponential rate. The carbon record is going up at an exponential rate. You know, the planet is burning up. And even within our generation, we're seeing, you know, ice caps are melting at an astonishing rate. And then it's very difficult now to find a place to ski in Europe. So this is happening in our generation. And the Green Party understands the urgency of this, the need for action. And politics is one place where we can legitimately coordinate socially in order to address these, not just as individuals, but together. In the same way, for example, that you might think it's not in your interest to have to pay the congestion charge. This is a relatively minor example, but when that was implemented, you may have thought it wasn't in your interest, but collectively, you felt actually it was the right thing to do, even though you may have had to pay something, because there's the cost to the environment. It could be the air pollution, or it could be the fact that nobody's getting anywhere very quickly. But the fact is, there are things in politics that it's worth doing for its own sake, okay? And in the same way, our party isn't just about environmental issues, because these are interrelated. So we're advocating what we're calling a Green New Deal. That is to say, a whole raft of policies which helps us to get people out of unemployment or unsustainable jobs. It's actually no good the government pumping money into car industries when nobody wants to buy a car, or they can't afford a car, or these cars are actually going to harm the environment because they're pumping out oil pollution. So what we need to think about is a massive investment in green technology, energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency measures. Think also about the fact that people are suffering right now from climate change. So climate change is related to injustice around the world. I was reading, it was a Gulf paper actually, a Gulf newspaper. They were majoring on a cyclone in Bangladesh, at which tens and thousands of people had actually been displaced. And that's happening as we speak. So there's a connection here, a deep connection, an interrelation between acting on climate change and helping to take people out of poverty and the injustice, which breeds migration, which isn't just economic migration, but out of necessity. So 2 other issues, if I may. Quality of life. I think, and again, I don't profess to know what your needs are, yes? I mean, we all have multiple identities. You could be a Muslim on one day and you may not be a Muslim another day. That is a matter for an individual. And not all Muslims think alike. So I don't profess to know what it is that is specifically in your interest, but we can consult, as Sohail was saying. That's an important concept. What is in your interest? But I would argue that one of the things that we found to be very wanting in the 21st century liberal capitalist age is the idea of consumerism. Okay? Not only is this harming the planet, but it's been found that it doesn't actually make people happy. So one good reason why green politicians wouldn't be going into developing their property portfolios, besides the fact that we didn't have enough time to do that, is we know it doesn't make us any happier. And studies show this, that the more you earn, the more you think you can't afford what you really need. So these are looking for false idols here. They don't actually give us any happiness. That quality of life is to be found in the family, in social cohesion, in the equality and diversity that comes from that fellow feeling with your neighbor. Lastly, I'll just say a little bit about the human rights framework, which Greens operate within and lobby in the European Parliament on. And if we think about the international arena that, for example, the Middle East conflict flares up in, why are we asking, for example, I mean, we're entitled to ask for international investigations into whether war crimes were committed by the Israelis, for example, during the onslaught on Gaza. But we can actually see it with our own eyes, can't we? We can actually see it with our own eyes, and this is happening as we speak. So the Green Party is the only party, actually, who has been arguing for the suspension of the EU-Israeli trade agreement. And that's just the pinnacle. We should not be doing that. The head of the Lib Dem list, actually, has been arguing, and I think she's ingenuous in that, but she needs to be interrogated on why she thinks that increasing solidarity with Israel economically is going to increase the chance that they will see the error of their ways. Okay, well, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for that. I guess I'm going to give the mic to the floor now if there are any questions.
Yeah. Assalamualaikum. All 3 of the 4 candidates mentioned something about the environment, and I have a question for each one. Starting with Mary, you mentioned that you had worked on some sort of legislation on the European level on reducing emissions. What sort of effect are we going to see in London because of the legislation that has been passed on the European level? What sort of effect are we going to see in London? Are we going to see an increase in petrol prices? I mean, are we going to see an increase in our travel costs? And is there a constructive plan that the Labour Party has? Christopher, you mentioned that you wanted that the Lib Dems were going to set up some sort of plan up that cleans up the past and sets up on the future. Just wanted to ask more questions of that. Does your party have a constructive plan when it comes to the environment and setting the environment right? Shahra, you mentioned that that the Green Party has since there's a Green New Deal that you mentioned with this